Hello students, how are you? Hope you are doing great. Now today I am here to discuss the topic metabolic bone disease, right? So to hear the terms, to hear the topic, it may be looking like it's a topic of medicines, but it's also related to orthopedics. Now we can say the combinations of the two subjects. So basically I'll focus over here from the orthopedics point of view. Okay. Now before going in details of the topic, let's talk about that what are the components of the bones, right? So after that we'll try to know about the physiology of the bones, I mean in terms of the the calcium homeostasis. After that we'll talk about the pathological conditions, right? So first see the bone that is made up of the two important things. One is organic component and other is inorganic component. So within the inorganic component, as you all know, there will be the salt of calcium and the phosphate, the hydroxyapatite. Uh, and in the organic part, we will get to see there will be the cells and protein matrix. Cells and protein matrix. And of course, we will get to see also the water. Then the the amount of the water within the bone, that will be more in terms of children. And within the organic component, we will get to see the cells and protein matrix. Cells will be near about 5 to 10%, and the protein matrix, that will be near about 90 to 95%. And here the percentage are also given. See, overall percentage 60 to 65, and the organic, that is 30 to 35%. Now within the cells, as I said, the 5 to 10% over here. So we'll get to see the presence of the three kinds of the cells. What are those? As you know, the osteoblast, osteoclast, and osteocyte. Now, what is the function of the osteoblast? As you know, osteoblast that helps to form the osteoid, right? Now this, whenever the minerals that will come and that will get deposited over the osteoid, and it will make the bone, that is nothing but the osteon. What did I say? The functions of the osteoblast is to form the osteoid, and whenever the minerals that will come and that will get deposited over the osteoid, and ultimately will get to see the formations of osteon. That means osteoid that will be converted into osteon. And what is osteon? Osteon is nothing but the bone. And for that thing, for the bone formation, as you know, there is the requirement of one kind of the enzyme. There is nothing but the what? Alkaline phosphatase. So that's why I have written over here that this osteoblast that rich in alkaline phosphatase is the bone builder. Now the osteoclast. Osteoclast, that means what? Osteoclast, if we see what is the main functions for the resorptions and remodeling. As we know, by increasing of the age, the bone should be regulated in such a way, the shape, in there should be there should be the bone turnover. Now just to have the bone turnover, there should be the functions of the two kinds of the cells, osteoblast as well as for the osteoclast. Now by having the bone turnover, the different kinds of the shape and size of the bone will get. Okay, that's our functionally normal. So osteoclast is nothing but the multinucleated giant cells. There we get to see the aggregations of the monocytes, right? And it's the least in number, and its functions to resolve the bone and remodeling of the bone. And osteocyte is just like the resting osteoblast. It's just like the resting osteoblast. Whenever there will be requirement of the osteoblast, this will be working as osteoblast, right? Is the resting osteoblast, and it's the most abundant one. Right? Okay. Now we'll talk about the calcium homeostasis, because when we are talking in terms of the the metabolic bone disease, of course there should be the relations with, of course, the mineralizations. That means nothing but the calcium, right? So we'll talk about in details right now the calcium homeostasis. So for that thing, I'm just taking a space over here. If you don't understand my handwriting, please let me know in the comment. I will just clear all these points, because I know my handwriting is not good to understand. So calcium homeostasis. So see, there are some triggering factor by which we'll get to see the calcium homeostasis. That means the normal level of the calcium that will be maintained. Now there are some triggering factors. For example, the hypocalcemia, hypercalcemia, hypophosphatemia. There are different kinds of the things. Now see, and what are the different regulators? If I write it over here, the term regulations, what are the different kinds of the regulators that regulates the level of the calcium in our body? So the first, I'll write it over here, the parathyroid hormone, the parathyroid gland that will release the parathyroid hormone, PTH. Second, I'll write it over here, the vitamin D, because as we know, as we will keep on discussing the topic, I'll talk in details that how the vitamin D that will regulate the calcium level. And the third one you can remember the calcitonin. Third one you can remember the calcitonin from the parafollicular cell. Tonin guys. Okay, calcitonin. Let me correct it. So calcitonin. So what did I say? That the calcium homeostasis regulations that will be done by the three major regulators. What? The parathyroid hormone, the vitamin D, and the calcitonin. Right. Now we'll talk about details on by one conditions. For example, if we get to see the development of hypercalcemia or hypocalcemia, or the combination of hypercalcemia plus hypophosphatemia, what type of the triggering factor will be activated? Okay, so let's talk in details about those things. First, I'll talk about hypercalcemia. So if we get to see the hypercalcemia, that means the level of the blood calcium level. Whenever we get to see the blood calcium level elevations, okay, at that time, what type of the hormone that will be activated? That will be activated what? That is the calcitonin. So here we'll get to see the calcitonin. Okay, and that will brings back the normal calcium and the normal phosphate level, right? So we can see over here the by reducing, or I simply can write bring back calcium and phosphate, right? So simply we can write it down over here. So both will be decreased, the calcium and the phosphate, and the level will be maintained over here. The second one, if we get to see the development of the hypocalcemia, that is very important. If we get to see the development of the hypocalcemia, at that time the parathyroid gland that will be activated. So what type of the secretion it will be? It will be the secondary parathyroidism, secondary hyperparathyroidism. Sorry, I am supposed to say that whenever, for whatever the regions within the blood, the calcium level that is dropped, at that time that parathyroid gland that will be activated. But what type of the secretion it will be? It will be the secondary hyperparathyroidism, because of course to maintain the calcium level by increasing its value, of course the parathyroid hormone is supposed to work over here. As a result, the secretions of the parathyroid glands would be also increased. That means simply we can say the parathyroid hormone secretion that will be increased. Basically it is a secondary. I will talk in details about also in terms of the primary hyperparathyroidism, the secondary hyperparathyroidism in details. Okay, so, subsequently. And here we will get to see that the calcium. See, I have written over here the phosphate, but I am writing it over here simply the calcium level. That will be, it will increase the calcium level up to the normal level. So up to normal level. Okay. In terms of the what? In terms of the secondary hyperparathyroidisms. The third one is, if we get to see that, for example, hypocalcemia plus hypophosphatemia. So in these cases, if we get to see the combination, if we get to see individually, for example, hypocalcemia or phosphatemia, or if we get to see the combination of these two, at that time the actions of the vitamin D will come. The actions of the vitamin D will be seen. For example, over here. Okay. Now here the vitamin D that will come in work and we'll get to see the vitamin D that will maintain the normal calcium and phosphate level. Okay, so it will be increased, both will be increased, and we'll get to see the normal calcium and the phosphate level, right? So what did I say? That in terms of the calcium homeostasis, that there are three major regulators. In terms of the calcium homeostasis, there are three major regulators. What are those? The parathyroid hormone, the calcitonin, and the vitamin D. So whenever we'll get to see that hypocalcemia, at that time the calcitonin that will be released, right? Sorry, whenever we'll get to see the hypercalcemia, at that time the calcitonin that will be released, and that will bring back the normal calcium level. Alternatively, if we get to see the hypocalcemia, at that time the the parathyroid hormone that will be released, and that will increase the calcium value up to the normal value. Okay, there is a secondary hyperparathyroidism. The third one is, if we get to see, for example, either hypocalcemia or hypophosphatemia, or if you get to see the combinations of hypocalcemia plus hypophosphatemia, at that time the vitamin D that will come in work, and that will help in or the calcium and the phosphate elevations up to the normal level, right? Okay, now we'll talk about in details one by one. Okay, as I said over here, that the secondary hyperparathyroidism. Now I'll talk about the secondary hyperparathyroidism. What type of thing is this? Okay. So for example, secondary hyperparathyroidism. Okay, let's write it completely. Secondary hyperparathyroidism. For whatever the regions, if we get to see the drop, if we get to see the calcium value is getting dropped, whenever the calcium's level is in the blood, that will be dropped for whatever the regions, at that time the parathyroid gland that will be activated, and it will secrete the parathyroid hormone, and this type of the thing is known as secondary hyperparathyroidism, right? So for whatever the regions, if the calcium level that gets decreased, at that time, for example, it's the parathyroid gland, it's the okay, it's the parathyroid gland, and this will secrete what? The parathyroid hormone, and once the calcium level that will come back to the normal level, once it will come back to the normal level, there will be the negative feedback. This is very important. What did I say? For whatever the regions, if the calcium level gets decreased, at the time the parathyroid gland that will be activated, and that will start secretion of parathyroid hormone, and whenever the parathyroid hormone that will be secreted, and that will bring back the normal calcium level within the blood, that will increase the calcium level, and that will increase up to the normal level of the calcium. Once it will reach to the normal calcium level, by the negative feedback, it will give signal where? Within the parathyroid gland, and it will stop working. Okay, so this type of the thing is known as the secondary hyperparathyroidism. Now, what about the primary one? If I say, what is the primary hyperparathyroidism? So in primary hyperparathyroidism, there is no problem in the outside of the parathyroid gland. The problem within the itself, where? Itself within the parathyroid gland. For example, if we get to see the tumor within the parathyroid gland, okay. For example, we are getting to see multiple endocrine tumor, for example, okay. So, for example, we are getting main on type, as we have read in the types main on. So here, for example, within the parathyroid gland, we are getting to see the development of the tumor. Sorry for the diagram. what I'm drawing. Anyway, if we get to see that these portions, if we get to see the tumors, okay, then we'll get to see it will secrete too much amount of the parathyroid hormone, and as a result the calcium level that will be increased so much, that will be increased so much, right? But there will be no there here the no negative feedback will not work. For example, if I say that from here the negative feedback will come, and that will stop the secretion of, parathyroid gland, but it's not true. Whenever we'll get to see the primary hyperparathyroidisms, at that time, in case of primary hyperparathyroidisms, the secretions of the parathyroid gland that will be not stopped by the negative feedback. So try to differentiate in between primary and secondary. In secondary, once it will reach to the normal calcium level by the negative feedback, the parathyroid, whenever the negative feedback that will reach up to the parathyroid gland, it will stop working. But in case of primary hyperparathyroidism, we'll get to see it will not stop working, it will keep on secreting the parathyroid hormone, right? So it's very important. Okay, now we'll talk about how does the parathyroid hormone works. How does the parathyroid hormone works, right? Works. So its functions. Okay. So what should I write? Of course, I have to write some portions. So the mechanism of actions of the parathyroid gland. What did I say? The mechanism of action of the parathyroid hormone. Rather, why should I say that gland? Of course, from the gland the hormone will come out, right? So mechanism of action of parathyroid hormone. So basically, it functions in the three levels, right? In the three levels. First, it works by kidneys. Second, also, for example, it works by kidneys. Okay. And third, it helps by the activations of the bone. So it's very important what I'm going to say right now. Okay. So please listen to me very carefully. Right. Okay. Let's continue. So first thing, what did I say? The mechanism of actions of the parathyroid hormone. So first I have drawn where in the kidneys, right? As we know that here the maturation of vitamin D, here the maturation of vitamin D. Now this parathyroid gland that helps to form what? On alpha hydroxylase enzyme. The parathyroid hormone that helps to form on alpha hydroxylase enzyme, and that will mature the inactive vitamin to active vitamin, right? So this PTH basically it releases what? On alpha hydroxylase, and ultimately from here we'll get to see the vitamin D. And whenever the vitamin D that will be formed properly, it will go where? Within the intestine, and from the intestine it will absorb the calcium, within the intestine, and from here it will absorb the calcium. So ultimately the calcium level that will be increased, right? The second thing, as we know, that parathyroid hormone that give the signals to the kidneys, to the nephrons. So under the actions, what did I say? Under the action of parathyroid hormone, so the nephrons that would like to what? That would like to reabsorptions of what? Calcium and excretion of phosphate. So what did I say? Under the action of parathyroid hormone, the nephron, they just absorb the what? Calcium, and then excrete out the phosphate. So another functions by the kidney by the actions of the parathyroid hormone, that anyway, just for understanding purpose. Wait. Anyway, for understanding purpose, try to understand. Okay. See here, we'll get to see what are the thing that by the action of the parathyroid hormone, we'll get to see that the calcium that will be absorbed, calcium that will be taken, absorbed, and whatever thing we'll get to see the phosphate that will come out, the phosphate that will come out within the excretion. So what did I say? Try to understand, guys. The first action by the kidney, it will mature the vitamin D, and the vitamin D further it will come where within the intestine, and from the intestine it will absorb the what? Calcium. So ultimately the blood calcium level that will be elevated. The second thing that it will by the action of what? Parathyroid hormone, the kidney that will absorb the what? Calcium, and that will excrete out the phosphate, right? So this is the another mechanism of the actions by which the blood calcium level that will be increased, right? The third one is bone. So see, the most important thing over here, by the action of the parathyroid hormone, because it is having the receptors where within the osteoblast. So once it will activate the osteoblast, wait a minute, let's write from here. So it will activate the osteoblast. So what did I say? By the action of parathyroid hormone, the osteoblast that will be activated, and osteoblast that will secrete what? The rank ligand protein. And within the osteoclast, there is the receptor for rank ligand. There is the rank ligand receptor. What did I say? First, the parathyroid hormone. Try to understand. First, the parathyroid hormone that will activate the osteoblast to form the rank ligand. And within the osteoclast, there is a receptor for rank ligand. So once the osteoclast that will be activated, whenever the rank ligand that will be attached along with it, it will start doing resorption. Resorptions of the bone and the remodeling of the bone. So whenever they will get to see the resorption of the bone or the remodeling of the bone, at that time we will get to see that calcium that will come out from the bone. For example, from here we will get to see the calcium that will be taken while within the circulation. Okay. So from here again it will come while within the circulation. From here again where that will come within the circulations. So within the blood, the serum, the calcium level that will be increased. So these are the actions of the mechanism of actions of the parathyroid gland by the secretion of parathyroid hormone, right? Okay. Now we'll talk about the other regions. Okay. So for example, we talk about the parathyroid hormones. Now we'll talk about a little bit about the vitamin D. Then we'll go back to where within the main symptoms in terms of the rickets. That means in terms of the disease, of course. And then we'll go back to the osteomalacia. Then we'll go to the where the osteogenesis is imperfecta. Okay. So this type of the disease we'll try to cover in this video. Okay. So let's go one by one. Okay. Another important thing I can see over here. Okay. So before going in details, let's say some more words, because from here the MCQs are asked. So if I say with the simplifications, that what kind of the lab investigations will you get in terms of the, for example, hyperparathyroidism. Okay. Okay. See, the lab findings in hyperparathyroidism. So what kind of the investigations we'll get over here in terms of the lab findings is very important. Okay. I forgot to mention this one, but I'm mentioning right now. It's very important, guys. Okay. So first of all, the calcium level that the parathyroid hormone that will try to get back the calcium level into the normal, or maybe sometimes it will be decreased a little bit. So it may be decreased or it come to the normal level. What about the parathyroid hormone? Of course, the parathyroid hormone that will be more. Okay. What about the phosphate level? The phosphate level, of course, it will be reduced through it. As I said, the phosphate that will come out. And what about parathyroid hormones? The phosphate level done, and is the alkaline phosphatase. The alkaline phosphatase that will be more. Why? See, whenever what did I say? Whenever the osteoblast that will be activated and the osteoclast that will start resorptions of the bone. Ultimately, there will be also the formation of the new bone. Whenever the bone resorption will be there, whenever we get to see the bone breaking down of the bone, whenever we are getting to see the breaking down of the bone, as well as we are also able to see that what bone formations. Whenever there is the breaking down of the bone, instantly, alternative in the alternative we will get to see also the bone formation. So whenever the bone formation will be there, of course we'll get to see the elevations of alkaline phosphatase. So alkaline phosphatase that will be elevated, and this type of the thing that is found in the secondary hyperparathyroidisms. So in secondary hyperparathyroidisms, the calcium level that may be reduced a little bit or normal, the parathyroid hormone that will be increased, the calcium, the phosphate level that will be reduced, as I said, that through the excretion the phosphate that will come out, and the alkaline phosphatase that will be increased. Why it will be increased, I just discussed right now. In terms of the primary hyperparathyroidisms, what kind of the changes we'll get to see? Here, the calcium level, of course, that will be elevated so much beyond the normal level. For example, the parathyroid hormone secretion of the parathyroid hormone that will be also much more. The phosphate that will be also reduced. And what about alkaline phosphatase? That will be also increased over here. So what's the main changes in between these two things? We are getting to see the calcium level here. It may be in the secondary hyperparathyroidism. So in the secondary hyperparathyroidisms, the calcium level that may be up to the normal level, but in primary hyperparathyroidisms, the calcium, the value of the calcium here over here, that will be beyond the normal level. Beyond the normal level. That's why it's very important to remember the lab findings, right? And another important drug you can remember over here, but I think I should say this one because from here questions are asked 2-3 times. Okay. Yes. So that is on drug. What did I say at first? The osteoblast that will be activated by the parathyroid hormones, the osteoblast that will secrete the rank ligand, and there is a receptor for rank ligand where within the osteoclast. Once the osteoclast that will be activated, that will stop breaking down of the bone or the resorption of the bone. But for example, if you want to stop the function of osteoclast, there is a drug that will inhibit the rank ligand from its job. That is denosumab. So if you use the denosumab that will stop the function of the rank ligand related osteoclast activation. So ultimately the bone resorption that will be stopped, right? Okay. Now let's talk about the different kinds of the disorders. Now see, once we are getting to see that the mineral is less, whenever the minerals, that means the calcium that will be less within the bone, definitely what the bone that will be weak. And what kind of the symptoms we can get to see? We will get to see the weakness of the bone, we will get to see the pathological fracture, the radiological features we can get to also see, you know, in children we will get to see the development of the rickets, in the adult we will get to see that osteomalacia. Let's talk about all these things step by step. Okay. 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 So let's yeah. So what kind of the things we'll get to see? See, in metabolic bone disease, we'll get to see the first of all weakness of the bone. Second thing, we'll get to see that the chances to develop the pathological fracture that will be increased. Third thing, as I said, the radiological features on the X-ray that will be shown clearly. Radiological features and the lab parameters that will be disturbed. What it is in terms of the different kinds of enzymes, the proteins. So lab parameters, this will be disturbed. This will be disturbed. So the weakness of the bone, will get to see the pathological fractures. We'll get to see also the radiological features that will be clearly shown on the X-ray, and the lab parameters that will be disturbed. Okay, so these are the findings as far as the metabolic bone disorders are concerned. Okay, now we'll go in details of what kind of if we get to see the problem at the mineral level. For example, the mineral is not properly deposited on the bone. So what kind of the problem we'll get to see? If we get to see the problem, for example, in the formation of the collagen, what kind of the problem we can get to see? For example, the scurvy. Okay, let's talk about step by step in all formats. Okay. So, as I was saying that in metabolic disorders of the bone, what kind of the problem we can get to see in the different levels. Okay, for that thing I am just deleting this part. I think this part will be enough for me. Okay. At first we'll talk about the minerals. Now see, minerals that will be basically regulated by what? The parathyroid hormones and the vitamin D. Parathyroid hormone, for example, it is working normally, but if we get to see the deficiency of the vitamin D, if we get to see the deficiency of the vitamin D at the mineral level, so what kind of the manifestations we can get to see? In children, we'll get to see the rickets. In adult, in children, of course you know it, but yet I am writing it once. In adult, we'll get to see the osteomalacia. So these are the findings as far as the minerals are concerned. So minerals, whenever it will be differentiate, the deficient, of course we'll get to see the hyperparathyroidism hormone. Hyperparathyroid hormone, secretion of the hyperparathyroid hormone. Okay, because whenever it will be reduced or it is not working properly or it is not getting deposited properly at that time, we'll get to see this type of the manifestations, right? Now we'll talk about the matrix. Okay, it's very important. Okay. As we know, in terms of the matrix, we'll get to see that collagen, that means from the pro-collagen, we'll get to see that what? Collagen. And this collagen that is the collagen that gets matured by the hydroxylation reactions of the what? Hydroxylation reactions of the vitamin C. So the vitamin C that will come over here and that will help in hydroxylations of the two amino acids that are what? Proline and lysine. Okay. So here the proline and lysine. So proline plus lysine. Here we'll get to see the hydroxylations of these two amino acids by the helping of vitamin C. So the collagen that will be formed ultimately. Okay, in the mature form. Now, for example, if we get to see the deficiency of the vitamin C, if we get to see the deficiency of the vitamin C, then the hydroxylation reaction of proline and lysine that will be not found over here. So what did I say? From the pro-collagen, we will get to see the collagen formations and the collagen that will be matured by the actions of the vitamin C. What does the vitamin C do? The vitamin C that helps in the maturations, rather we can say in the hydroxylations of the two amino acids, that those are proline and lysine. Whenever we get to see the deficiency of the vitamin C, the collagen that will not maturely form, ultimately you will get to see over here the scurvy. So scurvy will be found over here due to the deficiency of vitamin C. So pro-collagen And if we get to see the the problem at the cellular level, for example, okay, and of course the procollagen, that will be also, for example, the procollagen. If we get to see the osteogenesis imperfecta, at that time the procollagen, that will be not also synthesized properly. So okay, genesis imperfecta. So osteogenesis imperfecta, in this disease, the procollagen, that will not also form properly. For example, if it is okay, the procollagen is synthesized, okay, no problem. But whenever it will be converted into matured collagen, at that time, if we get to see the deficiency of the vitamin C, there will be not high oscillations of the two amino acids. That is very important for the maturation of the collagen. Those are the proline and lysines. So ultimately, we'll get to see the scurvy. And as far as the matrix is concerned, we can get to see the cells. Okay. Within the cells, we'll get to see osteoblast and osteoclast. Right. So what did I say? As far as the matrix is concerned, we'll get the two things. We'll get the collagen and the bone cells. Okay. So whenever actions of the osteoclast, whenever its actions will be increased or whenever its action will be decreased, whenever its action will be increased, it will develop the Paget's disease. Paget's disease, whenever its actions will be decreased, whenever the function of the osteoclast, that will be decreased, it will develop the osteoporosis. Okay. So what did I say? At the cellular levels, as we know that two kinds of the cells are important over here. One is the osteoblast and the osteoclast. So whenever the function of the osteoclast, that will be increased, it will develop ultimately into the Paget's disease. Whenever its function will be decreased, at the time we will get to see the development of osteoporosis. Okay. So these are the disorders we'll get to see as far as the matrix is concerned. At the last, we'll talk about the the matrix is concerned, procollagen and the cells are concerned, we'll get over here. Don't get confused with this one. So matrix is responsible for the collagen and the cells are totally different for the osteoblast and the osteoclast. And if we get to see the low bone mass low bone density, for example, if we get to see the low bone density or low bone mass, or if we get to see the bone mass, if it is less, if the bone mass is less, at the time the more chance to develop the what kind of the disease in the elderly individual, that is the osteoporosis. That is osteoporosis. So osteoporosis, that will be developed in elderly individuals because they are the bone density, that will be less. So of course the chance to fracture for these individuals will be much more, and that is nothing but the osteoporosis. Okay. So these are the disorders. Now we'll focus on the rickets in the next video. Okay, we'll talk about the rickets and the osteomalacia and reptiles. What kind of the manifestations we can get to see in the radiological aspect, on the pathological aspects, on the lab findings. Okay, and also from the anatomical aspect, we can get to see the coxa vara, coxa valgus. The genu vara, genu valgus. There are very important. There are very important the terminologies from where the questions are asked. Okay, so we'll talk about all these things in details in the next video in the part 2. Okay, so this was the first part in terms of the metabolic bone disorders. Now if you don't understand any point and handwriting, please let me know in the comment sections. Of course, I'll be there to help you guys, and see you in the next video very soon. And thanks for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe if you are new. Thank you.